Welcome to another stay at the Hotel Ford. On this episode, we're dialing back in on all the other stuff that needed to happen next to our power steering pump. See, we got a pile of stuff over here. Got my new water pump, the aluminum kind. We got the inevitable extra water pump bolts on account of she's a Ford, and you know how that goes. Gasket for the water pump, gasket for my timing cover, good valve cover gaskets instead of that cork nonsense we got over there. And of course a timing set, because it would be awful silly to tear all the way down into here, put a new water pump on and not do the 10-15-year-old timing chain right behind it. Yep. So it's about time to drain the cooling system into a clean pan, because that's good antifreeze in there, and we ain't made money, fellers. And then we'll get our fan shroud out of the way and get down into it. Alright. Now that we've successfully collected some of our coolant, I got my zip ties unfastened from the radiator here to the fan shroud. Peel him back. Get the 4 bolts out of my fan, and they're long bolts that go through this little extension doohickey behind it, because we ain't got no fan clutch over here. Yeah, see, there it is. We can get those 4 bolts loose, and that fan will come off with the extension guy behind it, and then we can get the shroud and the fan out together. Now we got that stuff out of the way. It looks like I got my pulley off of here too. See, this is why we're changing on it, that and all the rust. That's fine. It doesn't seem to be leaking yet, but the bearing just sounds terrible. Anyway, it looks like I should be able to leave the power steering pump and the alternator in place. I just got to take his belt off. I think he can hang to the side. And over here I can just remove this bracket and then slide that bolt back in, leave the power steering pump hanging off to the side. Then unhook our bits and pieces and get the water pump off and the crank pulley. And yeah, and then we'll take some more stuff off and do some more things. Might as well. Alright. Getting to have some room to work with. Got our heater hoses removed here and the radiator hoses out of the way. For the alternator, all I had to do is take loose this bolt here. That's one of my water pump mounting bolts, and loosen that guy there, and then I just swung him to the side and put a zip tie on him. Over here on the power steering pump, see this guy just flipped straight over. I just had to unhook the 3 bolts from him and then loosen that one, and then whoop, slide the bracket out of the way. And that should leave us plenty enough room for water pump and timing cover. Yay. Now it's about time to start trying to pull all the water pump bolts out. So we'll probably soak them all down with the PV Blaster one more time and take a break before we go break any bolts off. Well, that was pretty outstanding. Every single one of those bolts came out without snapping off. Ew, that's nasty. That's fine. We're going to be cleaning all that up really nice when we take that cover off. This guy right here is the timing cover. Underneath there is the cam gear and the chain and the crank gear. Now the next thing we'll do quick, let's get in here to this pulley. There's like 3 or 4 bolts. See the little stub outs here? There's bolts that run through that and hold this like triple pulley assembly on. And then we should be able to get to the crank bolt. Forgot my fancy Matco impact. Good thing I've been here before, and I know we can go underneath and like block up the what do you call it, the ring gear on the flex plate for the starter, and then get our big 1/2-inch wrench up there one way or another. Look at the level of filth in my pulley. I didn't know it was still blue. This thing probably has not been removed in at least 15, maybe 20 years. I just got my new license plate the other day. That was cool. I got a new antique plate for this old rig, which means I've had my antique plate that's on it currently for 10 years. So I thought that was pretty cool. Time flies, you know? You don't realize how long you've had stuff until things like that. In this. That's impressive. All that dust and dirt. Probably a little bit of oil, maybe. Possibly. No. We got a new front main seal anyway, so, you know, it's fine. But yeah, it's an insane amount of collections down there. Okay, now, because I forgot my fancy impact at work, we're going to go about this the Manuel way. I got my 15/16 socket on a reasonably large ratchet, and I went underneath the truck and removed my inspection cover, but there wasn't a real easy way of like getting a screwdriver or something in there and blocking the flywheel flex plate. She's an auto. So anyway, I'm just going to use my vice grips over here, just like I did to get the bolts loose for that pulley situation. And this bolt's a lot tighter, so, you know, I needed an extension. And yeah, I'm sure this should be no problem. Nope, not a problem. Yeah, see? Yeah, I told you it wasn't a problem. Yeah, I was really worried about that. Okay, now that we've got our harmonic balancer off of the crankshaft down there, after the bolt comes out, it just wiggle woggles off. No puller necessary. There's two main things we want to look at before we go reusing this guy. I already replaced this thing like 10 or 12 years ago or something, so it's not that old. But after you get it all cleaned up around here, the main thing we want to look at is there's a rubber layer right there between that metal and that metal. Metal, rubber, metal. You want that rubber layer to be like healthy looking, not full of cracks, not missing any pieces. See how it's like all solid all the way around? We don't even have like little dry rot cracks yet, so that's really sweet. Clean up all around it and on the other side. It's good to have as much of the dirt and gunk, like out of these holes, I should clean that out of this as you can, just because it is a finely tuned balancing guy. See this chunk missing? This thing is to counteract the imbalance of my pistons going up and down. So it's pretty important the weight that it is. Even though like the layer of dirt on it probably doesn't add enough weight for it to matter, it's just good to have it all cleaned off and not have extra rotating mass down there. But anyway, looking at our rubber on the other side, see here we don't have any cracks or chunks missing. And the other important thing you'll want to look at on your balancer right here, see how you can tell that that seal is that seal. That's your harmonic balancer, crank, whatever, front main, They call it a couple things, but that's the seal on the front of the crankshaft. You want to make sure, see where he was riding here to there? If that seal gets old and hard enough, it will actually start cutting into this metal here. And if you're not flat, smooth across here, you got a problem. If that thing is ate into, when you go and put your new seal on and spend all this time putting it back together, for one thing, it's going to leak. And another thing is the deformities in this guy will eat up your new seal. So yeah, that would suck. But yep, that's what you need to look for. Make sure you're flat across here and your rubber's not all going. Yep, yeah. Now we get to come on down here, and pretty sure I need to pull that fuel pump off and hang him to the side. You might be able to take him off with the timing cover. I wouldn't chance it, because I'm sure, you know, he rides on a lobe on the cam. There may be another lobe on the cam in the way of him coming off. So I'm pretty sure we need to just go ahead and take that off. I can probably leave the fuel lines connected and just move them to the side. And after that, we should be able to start unbolting the timing cover. Yippee-hoo! Alright. To get my fuel pump off over here, I took the power steering pump the rest of the way loose, set them over to the side, and then right here, the, what are you? My oil pressure sensor goes right there, and he's in the way of removing that fuel pump, so I took him out, put a little tissue over there to try to keep all the crap from getting into the oil. Now it's about time to unbolt this timing cover, and I've gone all the way around it with the brake clean and wire brushes and whatnot, and cleaned up all of this mating surface all the way around, which is important because this motor has a fresh oil change in it because I don't plan things well. Ideally, you'd want to change the oil after you do this in case you get anything down in there. But I'm just trying to not get a bunch of gunk and dirt and coolant into the oil. So now before I pull this off, I'll like blow into these ports a little bit and try to blow some of the water out so when I open this it doesn't dump coolant into the oil. Yeah, that should work fine. I almost forgot about this contraption my boss man hooked me up with. She's one of them air-powered vacuum evacuator guys. So I should be able to go like that, and then go like this, and then you go on this side. Yeah. Now we're sucking the stuff out of it. Alright. Now we got our timing cover removed there. And all the bolts out of it. Don't forget about the 4 in the bottom. It'll trick you now. You might think there's only 2 in the bottom, but there's 4. 1/2 inch, 7/16. Anyway, now she's removed, and my assumption was correct when I was putting all these parts together because of the noise my water pump was making. I was like, it's been like at least 15 years since I did a timing chain set on this thing. And yeah, you know what? I think it might have been time. Holy shoot, fellers. God dang. Alright, well, I'm glad we did that. Whew. That thing's loose enough. We were going to be skipping a tooth or breaking a chain and slamming pistons into valves here in a little while. Alright, she might run better after this. Anyway, now it's time to move on forward. We're going to pull this bolt out and take the set off, but before we do that, we're going to roll the motor around into time. Even though you could just take the set off the way it is now and then line your new set up, you know, this guy pointing that way, the other dot wherever he is right now. But if you line him straight up and get the dot pointed down, or whichever way he goes, then it'll be a lot easier to keep things straight because you'll have a point here and a point here instead of one there and one wherever. So you can do either way, but I'm going to go ahead and roll it around where they're pointed at each other so it's easier to keep them in line. Your points of reference aren't so far away from each other. Oh yeah, by the way, this, see my oblong majigger thing? That's what drives the fuel pump. I always mistakenly think that the fuel pump arm is like actually touching the cam itself, but it's on this doodabby on the front of the cam pulley. Yeah, neat. Oh my goodness, look what we did. We need to drive this to work Monday. Holy. Look at it with all the slack on one side. Woo! That thing's loose enough to need a tensioner. All right. All right. Now I've got, you might be able to see them down there, but I got my dot pointed down. And there is a dot right here above that keyway. So they're like pointed at each other. Just like over here on my new timing set. See, got the dot. And make sure you take care before you pull the old timing set off. Study which way these gears are facing so you don't swap somebody backwards or whatever. You gotta pay attention now. This is timing. If you mess up, you mess up. You know what I'm saying? If you don't know what I'm saying, you shouldn't be doing this. Anyway, yeah, moving on. Now we can take that bolt out and do the swappy swap. Ooh, that'll be nice. We've been at this for hours. That'll be the first new part going on. Ooh. Yeah. Alright, well this was scary. You'll notice that our two cam gears don't look the same. And I was worried that this was for like a electric fuel pump application. But it looks like my my mechanical pumper mounts on here just the same that it does on here. It just looks terrifying because in this guy, it's like the center of the pulley is different. It's all off to the front side. And in this one, it's like centered. See? Whew. It looks like, because I've studied it pretty hard, holding this up against here and up against there, it looks like when you hold it sideways, he's the same distance out away from the teeth as it is on the, I mean, they're the same, you know what I mean, as far as this guy away from the teeth. So, should be okay. If we're not, the fuel pump doesn't line up right. But I think it's going to be in the same spot. They just had to freak me out, changing the gear up on me. Alright, moving on. Now, probably would be a good idea, before I put that chain in the way, let's get in here, stuff this guy up with some rags, and then clean my mating surface all around while it's nice and accessible. Well, it was almost time to start putting things back together, but now I'm concerned. That's the brand new timing set and chain. All the slack on one side, it's nearly a ½ inch of deflection. Not much less than what we just took off. So either we have a bad set here and this chain is too long, or my cam bearings are worn out and my cam's sitting lower than it's supposed to. I don't know. Alright. Well, had a few things come in. This is, went with two different options here. This is one of them. A double roller. Either way, we're going more performance. Yeah. But, so I got a double roller there. And over here, we got the rear performance guy. A gear drive. Not entirely sure if I'm even going to open this guy up. I just spent a bunch of time researching the gear drive. And he's not too bad to install. Let me go to my timing cover over here. You do got to modify some stuff. Like that there. Apparently that little metal tabby there is a noise maker. You see mine's made the noise before. I read that that dude is in there for the chain to slap into when it gets worn out enough. That way you hear the noise and you do something about it before the chain breaks and you pistons into the valves, you know? But anyway, yeah, that's what it would take to install the gear drive. I got to cut that noisemaker guy off, which is not a problem. And I was just about to come out here and start working on doing the gear drive. However, this truck is a 3-speed, and I drive the highway every day, like 65, 70 miles an hour, you know what I mean? Yeah, so I would be excited about all the noise that it makes, because I like engine noises, especially mechanical ones, but not many other noises. Anyway, the problem is, I'm thinking if I do want to do a 5-speed swap on this thing one day. I think if I would have done that already, I would probably be very gung-ho on the gear drive. But, I daily drive this thing every day, and I think all that noise might be aggravating. And one other thing I saw on a YouTube video, a feller had to... The gears here in the middle, they have like 2 studs that they spin on, and he had to shorten those studs with a grinder. He also had to modify the C-clip to make it where it fit on his 302, which again, none of that is a problem, but after that, we're pretty committed to that expensive timing set, and if I don't like the noise, that's going to kind of suck. So I reckon we're going to pull that one off because of... reasons. And we're going to try this guy out, and if it fits all slacky, I think we're going to go ahead and open up the gear drive and try it too, and if it fits all slacky, then we might have problems. Alright. She's not even on all the way yet. I still got to put the bolt in, and that'll probably adjust my slack a little more. But look at that. That's better. That's more like what you'd expect out of a brand new timing set. I reckon maybe this timing set over here, there isn't anything wrong with it. It's just a slightly different application, I guess, possibly. You think all the old 302s, the crank and the cam would be the same distance apart, but maybe she's got a race car crank in it. I don't know why there's different ones, but there's different ones. But yeah, we can definitely run that. Man, I kinda was hoping I'd be forced to use the gear drive, not gonna lie. But I sure would hate for my wife to not be able to ride in the old hot rod with me because it's too wee while we're riding down the highway, you know. But I do think, I'm pretty sure, at one point here, I plan on doing a huge resto mod project on this thing. I want to make it nice and fast. Maybe Vic front end, you know what I mean? Like a lot of stuff. I think at that point, I want to sink a whole bunch of money into this motor or another old 302 like this. And I want to do the whole girdle route underneath it. And set up a motor to hold like 1,000 horse and then make 500. And then just have all sorts of fun with it for the rest of my days, maybe. But yeah, I think at that point, when I finally get to do my whole cab off and really go through this motor and do some cool stuff with it, I think then we're going to go to the gear drive. Because also at that point, I'll be doing a 5-speed swap in it, and then cause I'm pretty sure I would love that gear whine. Pretty sure I would absolutely adore it. The only problem is we run like $3,000, $3,500 sometimes, running down the highway, and yeah, the whirling at that RPM might be not very nice for a long period of time. But if I had a 5-speed in it, I think the gear drive would be minty. It just suits It just suits the old rig. Yeah. The problem is, though, we go... Yeah, that might get old. Anyhow, looks like we're going to move forward with our double roller. Yeah, we got a little performance out of it either way. That's right. So we go ahead and move forward, get this guy all bolted in. Already got my timing cover cleaned up, and we'll see if we can't get that all closed up finally tonight. Yeah. All right. Now I got my cam bolt torqued down to 45 pounds. I soaked that chain down with the oil. That's important. And over here, we're about all prepped up on our guy. Just got a little more paint to scrape off of my mating surface. Got my little corky guys all cut down to size to fit in here. And then I'm going to throw a skim of RTV on here to hold those in place, and around my coolant ports on the engine and that cover over there. So just a little schmoot around those guys. And we'll be finally ready to put a timing cover back on. Woo-hoo. All right. Well, she's coming along. Got the timing cover all bolted on and torqued down. Now we're about to... a good sandwich. Now we're about to move down here and torque my bolt into the dampener. I read that that's 60 to 90 foot-pounds, so we'll probably be like 80-ish or something like that. Looks like my... Yeah, I've got my littler torque wrench. She maxes out at 75, so we'll probably set her to 75 and then put a good big ratchet on it and give it a little more. Get her closer to that 90. Anyway, moving forward from here. Oh yeah, one more thing before I take off from the timing chain. There was one thing I forgot to mention about why I decided to not do the gear drive on my old daily here. I did a lot of reading and research on it, and as it turns out, that noise that they make that I would love to hear, it makes a lot of vibration, and it has like its own vibrational frequency that is very different to all the vibrations that are going through the block normally that the block was designed to handle. So I read that when you add a gear set onto one of these motors, it can wreak havoc on your cam bearings. It can also cause some weird anomalies with your valve springs at high RPM. Apparently, they're not the greatest for high RPM, which is kind of weird. I thought that's what they was for. But apparently, yeah, those frequencies get really strong at really high RPMs, and it can cause some weird anomalies with the way that your valve springs naturally, do their spin as the engine's running. It can cause the valve to, instead of closing all thoroughly, it can cause like a hop and weird stuff like that. But the main reason why I steered away from it is because of the cam bearings. This old motor's got the cam bearings in it from 20 some odd years ago. She was a rebuild, whatever, fresh motor from AutoZone 20 something years ago. But yeah, I figured that's not a good idea to do that to those bearings, especially since I drive it every day. I read that a lot of dudes recommended if you're going to use a gear drive, it should be a race car, not something that gets driven all the time, every single day. So yeah, that's the reason we're staying away from it. Even though I'd love to have it on there just because it's so cool and it's race car parts, you know what I mean? Anyway, let's torque our bolt down and put a water pump on. Alright, it is about water pump time. And now, as I start mounting this water pump up on all my water pump bolts, especially these long ones, we're going to Loctite the threads, and we're going to apply a little bit of anti-seize down the length of this bolt, the shank of it, if you will. And the reason for that is because the reason that these things are famous for water pump bolts breaking every time you have to do a water pump on them is because that bolt is steel, and it threads in to a steel block. That's never where your problem is. The problem is the timing cover is aluminum, and now the water pump is also aluminum. So what happens is the shank of this bolt lives inside that aluminum with all the heating and cooling every single day, and it builds up corrosion because they're, what's the word? There's a word for it where they're two different metals and they don't get along well, and steel and aluminum are like that. So what happens is the space inside this hole starts filling up with corrosion from the bolt and from the water pump, electrolysis or something like that. And why these things always snap off isn't because it's seized in the block, it's seized in the aluminum. That's why whenever one breaks, it always breaks like way out here. It never breaks off in the block. Yeah. So doing the anti-seize on the shank of it should help make it where the next time I need to do this in a couple of years, the bolts will come out again. Yeah. Oh, fellers, I'm starting to get pretty excited. It's only a little bit after 9 o'clock. I think we're driving the old Ford to the work in the morning. Anyway, the reason I got y'all out, you see my old radiator hose? That thing's like, yeah, it is the way that it looks, and it's all crunchy on the inside. And then I was just thinking, dang, I forgot to get a new lower radiator hose. The upper don't look too bad. And then I was like, oh shoot, wait a minute. There's a Ford 302 right there. Ooh, let me get my light. Matco. Anyway, looky there. Looky there. I mean, I don't know if it'll fit yet. I haven't tried it. I might be getting excited preemptively. But we're going to try that out. All right. Well, score for the home team. That radiator hose was the same. And I still need to replace that one here fairly soon. See, it's kind of swollen. She got some years on her, but it's not all crusty on the inside, and it feels a lot better than the one we had. And real quick, see, I got my fan shroud in. Make sure you do that before you put the fan on. Now, I'm going to do the same thing here on these bolts that I did on the water pump. See how they're really long and there's a lot of rust all in here. That was after the wire brush. We're going to do some Loctite here and then anti-seize all down there. Because of the same thing. Steel bolt and my fan spacer snout here is aluminum. And it's just that easy. Man, that looks cool. Oh, boys. Man, I've been envisioning exactly that right there in my head for about the last week straight. Woo! I hope it stays pretty for a while. Anywho, everything's on, tightened up, and she's full of the radiator fluids. It's about that time. Oh, that's loose. Hold on. Alright, well, that was scary. Had some antifreeze building up over here. Turns out I saw some water streaming out of my hose here. So I cleaned him up a little bit and snugged the clamp down more. Now we'll try that again. Alright, now we're moving on, getting to my valve cover gaskets finally. You may be able to tell they leak a little bit, and it just smells like you're going to catch on fire. So we're going to take care of those leaky gaskets and bring the valve covers over to my parts cleaning station. We'll get them all cleaned up and ready to be pretty in Ford blue again. Yeah. My dad painted these like 20 some odd years ago. Alright, progress is being made. They're considerably cleaner, so that's good. And we have painstakingly removed on all the RTV I put in here. Also washed out the insides. Had quite a bit of the carbony buildups in them. Alright, now that we've spent an hour getting them nice and clean, it's time to get the sander out. And yeah, because if I paint it now, it won't look nice. You'll see all the lines from where there is paint and where there isn't paint. That, and we got little rusties everywhere. So we just need to bring it all down real quick. Whew, all right. Well, that's pretty close. I went ahead and took all the rust and the rough paint lines. He's just smooth now. I took all that down with 120 grit sandpaper, and then I made a big old jump up to like 800, so they should be smooth-ish, you know, after we get the coats on. Whew. I've really been rubbing on these things for a while. But anyhow, I think that's as close to prepped for paint as we're gonna get. Alright, now we're all primered up, and I'll let this get like good and cured, and we'll do some really fine sanding on it here in an hour or two, and then we'll hit it with the blue and the clear. Actually, we'll hit it with the blue, and I want to try to get a little tiny brush and like some white paint, and you know, do the outline of the fjord, and then we'll clear it. Okay, now I've got 2 coats of the Ford blue paint on them, and it's been like an hour or so, maybe like it's been like 45 minutes since I got the last coat on them. And now I got one of my wife's makeup brushes. She has a bunch of these, and she's had this one in the closet for like 6 years, so she said I could use it to, yeah, we're gonna try to do that. Should be fine. All right. Well, never tried to do that before, and my steadiness is a little unsteady. Get you with it right side up. But, you know, she's got the old rustic look. Yeah, that's what we were going for the whole time. It couldn't be too perfect. Look at the truck they're going on. But anyway, you know, from far enough away, she she does get the job done. It's not perfect, but it's nice. I like the effort. And when you get far enough back, you know, it looks good. She's a 10-footer. And now we'll finally hit it all with the clear, and hopefully that'll play nice with the two different paints. Yeah. Alright. Now we got 3 coats of the clear coat, and we'll let them simmer down overnight. And got my fancy new Fail Pro gaskets here. Feeling a little more confident about actually not having leaky valve covers for once with those. And they're blue. Isn't it perfect? And another funny thing over here, you may notice there's no grommet in my PCV valve hole because I foolishly removed the 43-year-old grommet out of there and it cracked apart into pieces. So I was like, no problem, I've got plenty of motors over here. So I went and looked at the grommets on my other motors. I've got one on the 351 here and one on my other 302, and yeah, they're both like 30, 40 years old as well. So I know better than to try to pull those out of those valve covers because they're going to crumble into pieces. So I got creative here. Here's another PCV valve for size fitment, and I found a piece of hose, and it fits in the hose great, and this fits in that hole just a snug. Pretty much fixed. Anyway, we'll see you in the morning. All right. Well, that looks a little better. My lettering is a little rough on the fjords, but I'm glad I went for it. It looks a lot better than me just leaving it blue. Let me get over. Look at all the blue stuff. Ooh. Yeah. I was thinking about painting some of my power steering stuff a different color, but I think I like it black. It looks kind of nice how all the shiny blue stuff is like in the engine V, and then the extra accessories will just leave like black and whatnot. If I ever get to painting this, I think that's the air conditioning bracket that my alternator hangs off of. If I ever paint that, we'll probably do it black too. You know, it looks nice in the V8 blue. Pretty. But anyway, that pretty well wraps up the long endeavor of making it all pretty and changing the timing chain and sealing up some leaks up top and in the front. From here, off camera, I'm going to go ahead and break out the timing light and vacuum gauge, and I'll mark my little mark on the balancer, and at least my my little tabby tab guy over here is nice and shiny. Can you? Yeah, at least that guy's all pretty and blue. It should be easier to spoticate them, even though there's no direct line of, you know, we'll figure that out. But anyway, off camera we'll dial the timing in, and you should do that too anytime you put a new timing set on a motor, especially when it was wore out and sloppy before and it's not now. Chances are your initial timing's in a different spot than it used to be. Anyway, thanks for watching. Comment, like, subscribe. Ford Blue.